This is Theme Park Thursday with Dillo's Days.
Well, reveal your other iconic Streetmosphere character, if you, because I don't need, was he a talent agent? What was his
occupation?
He was a movie mogul, and so the movie mogul that I thought of was the movie mogul from MGM, which it was at the time, which was L.B. Mayer.
Mm-hmm.
So I created Shelby Mayer.
Shelby Mayer, yeah,
and who just was the richest human being in the world, and his slogan was, "Who needs talent? I've got money." So he did horrible motion pictures, just horrible B motion pictures, but so many of them. His studio could crank out 3 to 8 of them a week, and
right.
So
Did you was there ever a time where you did both characters back and forth, or did you just transition from one to the other?
No, and you know what? I'll tell you, it was Gary's idea, and I was really mad at him because I did not want to play a high-status character.
Oh, God.
And he believed that I was better at it, and I was convinced I would not be.
Mm-hmm.
And he was right, and I was wrong.
So,
about 30 seconds, I walked out. And I walked out in that outfit, which was just splendid.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know why. I come out and I look at this woman, and I have this pipe in my hand, and this guest walks by, this lady, and I go, "Madam, I adore you in all of your films, particularly the ones where you swim." And walked away. And I was like, "I've got this. I've got this." And from then on, it became this weird alter ego.
Mm-hmm.
And other people, if you talk to that play characters for a long time, you start to think like them when you are them.
Mm-hmm.
And things will come out of your mouth that would never, ever come out of my mouth. But they would just roll off his tongue like, much more clever than anything that would have, typically come off mine.
Yeah. No, that's amazing. Gary Izzo and I had the same conversation 15 years ago, where I played a thief at the Renaissance Festival, and I loved my low status character more than anything in the world. And he was like, "No, I want you to play a high status character. You can have, and it just." And he was right, and I was
right. I never went back. And then I played Shelby for 10 years.
Yeah.
And then left, and then came back, and then left and came back and played him again for 5 years.
Wow.
Yeah. Well, because the thing that I definitely drew inspiration from watching you all the years in Streetmosphere is that you were always like the orchestrator, the conductor. You were kind of the one bringing it all together and making sure the audience was gathering and, kind of easing in. You always seem to be the person keeping things in check. And that was something I always watched from you and picked up from you. And I think from another vantage point is the impression of guests coming into a theme park. You seem to be the one making the strongest impression as like, boom, you're in Hollywood. And I am here to tell you, you're in Hollywood 1948.
Yeah.
Well, Gary was the king of Leons. And, this is something I always told people when I would train them in Streetmosphere or something. I said, this is the one thing, as you're building your character, this is what you've got to realize. Because people, they come on with their characters and they say, this is who I am, and this is what I do, and this is what I am, and this is what I'm about. And I would say, look, what you have to realize is they don't care about you very much.
Mm-hmm.
It's not very interesting to them because they don't have any context for you. So who you are and what you do isn't that fascinating. But what you think about them is immediately fascinating.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And so that's why I would always set the context with the lay-on. That was always the most important thing, setting who the guest was.
Yeah.
And laying their part in the scene and having roles for them, assumptions for them that would often be ridiculous.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But
and did that start to, at what point of all this performance and seeing that vantage point for the guest, did you start seeing that the wheels turning, so to speak, in terms of translating that into service, into what Disney was doing overall as a company for the guest? When did you start drawing was the parallels there all along in terms of delivering the service?
We were some of the only Disney characters that could actually come off stage, if you will, break the fourth wall, and
Right.
facilitate a problem.
Mhm.
We could, let's say something was going, a family was fighting, or let's say a ticket didn't work, or let's say something broke, or somebody dropped an ice cream cone.
Right.
Somebody couldn't have walked off the stage from Beauty and the Beast and facilitated that,
Right.
Right.
where we could stay in character and help find lost children, find somebody in a store. We
Yeah.
could
Right.
even do things back then, like let's say somebody didn't have a reservation for a restaurant, or daddy had messed up and made it the wrong day. Shelby could walk into the Brown Derby with this family.
Yeah.
Say, these are my guests, da, 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 and they would play along.
Yeah.
And they knew that we were doing recovery.
Mhm.
Right.
And so they'd play right along. And so that to me was the best part about being in Student Sphere, because you were able to be this super Disney cast member and be in a show.
Mhm.
It was great.
Almost like being a superhero at Disney. It's almost like you're developing superpowers on your.
Nice plug.
When you're still performing in Street Mo 1, you started teaching traditions.
Yes, because that's how it worked. You were cross-utilized. And even when I was doing courses at Disney Institute and doing the traditions program there, or explaining how it worked, breaking it down, I would still be cross-utilized in entertainment.
Mm-hmm. Cool. And so what when and around your time performing did you start getting into the classes and leading the classes? Mid-90s or early on? Yeah.
I was in the group of 92, 93, and typically you're only in 1 year, but I got to be the coach, so I got to stay on for 2 more years and with 2 more groups, and then that's about the time that the Disney Institute started doing business programs.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
And so it just sort of happened there, and so at that point, do you know who Sheila Ward is?
Well,
Terry Ward, the amazing.
Yes.
Yes, we know Terry very well. Yes.
Yeah.
She was at the Adventures Club for many years, an amazingly talented woman. She and I would do these corporate traditions classes, and they would send us around the country, which they hadn't done. And so they send me to Canada. It was very cold, and I'm to go to 3 different BMW of Canada locations. And the gentleman, the CEO, found out that we were still just basically hourly cast members. And so he takes me to dinner. And I'm not sure I should say this, but he takes me, he goes, "You're a silly little man." And I go, "Excuse me?" And he goes, "Okay, I just found out that basically you come here and you're on an hourly wage, and so all this money that we've paid for you to come here, you'll never see any of that money, because I'm going to do you a favor, and I'm not going to tell you how much I paid, but I am going to tell you this: you really need to go out on your own." And I was like, "Oh, that's very, very, very nice." And then 3 months later, Bank of America came.
Oh my gosh.
And they were our guests, and they met me outside after one of the classes and said, "Hasn't anybody headhunted you?" And I was like, "I love being here, and I'll never leave. I'll be a cast member forever." And then they handed me a card, and long story short, in a matter of months, I found myself in Bank of America in the huge boardroom with somebody going, "So, do you think you can create a program like that here?"
Oh my
Wow.
gosh. That's
And at first you go, "You betcha!"
Like what?
Yeah.
And then you know what I thought of? I thought of that story about Walt. The story about Walt where he wanted to understand how cameras worked. So he took a camera home, he took it apart, and then realized that putting it back together was going to be a lot harder.
Yeah.
To me, that's what this was like. I had taken
Yeah.
the camera apart, and now I just had to put it back together.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I drew on what I knew from there, but in a way that I could explain it. I developed my wheel of culture, which was story, language, behavior recognition. And that's how I sort of created the programs for the banks and the credit unions and things like that. That's always the wheel I learned. Start with the company's foundational narrative just like we did, just like they did at Disney. The
Yeah.
foundational narrative. What is the real story? What was the foundational root? The family you're joining, the narrative you're joining.
Mhm.
Because from that, every one of those companies has a language with which they tell that story. Disney, you know, they didn't wear uniforms, they wore costumes. They told the story of, well, the first day. They talked about the why. They
Yeah.
talked about Walt's dream. So from that narrative and the language, that inspires the actions, the
Right.
behaviors that you see on stage and
Mhm.
off stage. And here's where the tricky part is. This is where a lot of companies drop the ball, because then what you need to do is recognize these contemporary moments of excellence
Mhm.
and find a way to place them into the foundational narrative.
Right.
So that those magical moments that are happening now get into the pipeline and are told just like the ancient tales of this magnificent thing. So what you've got to be doing is, what can I recognize that's happening right now
Mhm.
that could be a story in traditions, that could be
Yeah.
art when somebody tells the story of this park. What about the lady who did this? What about, I always think about the pizza lady who, when you're gonna be a trainer, you do the tasks. When you're gonna teach traditions, you spend several weeks cross-viewing, cleaning bathrooms, doing, so that you'll have some sense. So one day I'm backstage behind Tomorrowland with this lady, elderly lady. All she'd done for 19 years was make pizza behind Tomorrowland Terrace. That's what she'd done. She showed me how to do it. And we'd done some pretty rough tasks, working in laundry and stuff. So to me, I'm like, and I'm like, oh, la, 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 and I'm humming to myself. Oh. And so the pizza dough would come on this little belt. So you'd have like cheese in this hand and a paintbrush for the sauce, and these things would come at you. And I'm just, to me, this is like the best old video game. And I'm like, la, 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 boom, 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 and I'm just having just a gay old time. And this lady's watching me, and she's watching. Finally, she can't take this. She walks up to me and goes, honey, baby, honey, baby. You got to get that cheese all the way around that pizza real even, because if you don't, it ain't going to be good show for my guests. This lady had never interacted with a guest, and yet she was still connected with what was going. She knew the why.
Right.
What I always say, she knew not just what she was doing, she knew what she was being. And that's what I always try to say. There's a difference between what we're doing and there's a difference between a task and a job. Anybody can throw cheese on a pizza, you know, but to have that consciousness where you know that you are contributing to the show, that is part of the genius, I think, of the Disney training program.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.